Hi, everybody. If you know about politics and economics, then you know about Paul Krugman. But if you don't, here's a refresher, a brief one. Krugman is the professor, decorated professor of economics, primarily at Princeton, and he goes from time to time to the London School of Economics. He's taught at MIT, Berkeley, and a number of schools. But in 2008, Krugman hit the intellectual jackpot. He was awarded the coveted Nobel Prize in economics for his theory of two-country trade, basically saying that countries with like goods will basically consume those goods. So that if you have Germany, which makes BMWs, then Germans will also buy Cadillacs. And on the other hand, the United States, which makes Cadillacs, will also buy BMWs. Pretty simple, huh? Well, that's Krugman's contribution. But it doesn't make Professor Krugman an expert in the Treasury, or for that matter, troubled banks. And yet he's more than waded into this discussion. He's dove in from on high with full force. The result has led to what is the most intellectually sloppy set of blog posts I've ever seen from an economist in my entire life. Specifically, Krugman attacks the Troubled Assets Relief Program from the perspective that, first of all, the government should not essentially subsidize these bad assets. The idea of this program is that if you're an investor, you can actually go to the government and get them to give you a non-recourse loan of about 85% of the troubled assets that we're talking about. Now, Krugman doesn't want that loan to happen. But what Krugman doesn't explain in any of his blog posts is what the alternative should be. If you read Krugman's posts, he's essentially saying, look, a bad asset is a bad asset. But the trouble is that these bad assets are arguably causing banks not to give out credit. So what better way to take them off the books than to provide some investment relief for those who would buy these troubled assets? They are troubled assets. Otherwise, they continue to be losses on a bank's ledger, and it doesn't help the situation. Now, Krugman's point is, look, if the government spends all this money and it doesn't work, then the taxpayer is basically SOL. But here's the problem. If that system, that proposal, were standalone, as opposed to part of the myriad number of proposals and policies that have already been launched by the administration in the form of the stimulus package, as well as different aspects of the TARP program, I would agree with him. But it's not the only part of a large array of measures we need to take to improve our economy. In this case, we need to make sure the banks are solvent so that as the president's job growth program grows, people who previously lost their jobs would get jobs and then be able to afford loans from banks. In other words, be able to afford to hold credit. That's how the system fits together. Now, in my opinion, the missing link from the program should be a $3,500 give to each American taxpayer at or under $100,000. I think that would be the coup de grace that would end our bad economic times like that. And it would give enough time for the various aspects of the president's overall policy system to go to work. I think that's the missing link. But back to Krugman. Krugman is so bent on criticizing the Obama administration, perhaps because he wasn't selected as chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, that he steps over himself. For example, he writes that the administration argues that there's no subsidy involved, and that he claims the administration says that the government does not assume risk. But that is completely 180 degrees different than what Tim Geithner said on Monday, March 23rd. He did agree and did state that the government assumes a lot of risk. So did Christine Romer, who also works with Geithner, and she's on the President's Council of Economic Advisors. So Krugman is so interested in being a critic that his normally powerful intellectual engine has shut down, and the only reason why you're hearing about it is because, or it being Krugman's argument, is because the people at stations like MSNBC are not economists and think, well, he got the Nobel Prize, so he must know what he's talking about in this situation. My argument is that he doesn't. In this case, I think Krugman needs to take a step back, really look at the program, both its positives and negatives, and if he doesn't like it, come up with an alternative plan of his own, because he hasn't done that at all.